What's up guys, Intellitech Studios here, and today we'll be doing a little bit of a different video. Now as we know, 2023 has been around for a couple months now, and it's actually been just 2 months shy of me doing vacuum reviews for over 5 years. So to celebrate, and since I've obviously reviewed a ton of vacuums recently, and over the past few years, why don't we make a video where I discuss every single vacuum that I've specifically reviewed and specifically recommend. So, in any different category that we're going to be discussing, we'll talk about stick vacs, we'll talk about uprights and canisters, but we will mainly focus on full-size uprights, since that's generally my main wheelhouse. We're not going to talk about extractors, because frankly, I don't have a good answer on that yet. And as far as vacuums, there's a ton that I reviewed, and there's surprisingly a ton that I recommend. Now, just because something's on this list doesn't necessarily mean I don't like it. It may just be a case where I haven't reviewed it yet, therefore I can't give an opinion based on my experience that would be accurate without having usage. I don't recommend anything, or I will not recommend anything in this video that I have not personally used and reviewed, or at the very least used enough and to be able to review it. So with that said, we're going to start, and we're not going to organize this based off of category. We're going to do this based off of price. So every single one of these links, whether they're Amazon or Walmart, will be organized chronologically from the lowest price to the highest price as of the time that I film this video. With some exceptions, if they're really close, I may lump brands together, etc. You'll see what I mean later in the video. So, the vast majority of these will be links on Amazon, and I will have affiliate links, in the case of the Amazon links, in the description. So if you want to purchase any of these machines, use my affiliate link. I'll get a small kickback, and it'll help out the channel and help me review more vacuums and hopefully get more information out to you guys. Now, the ones that are at Walmart are just the ones where either they weren't available on Amazon, or I simply found the best price at Walmart. So these are all going to be on Amazon with some exceptions, and you'll of course see those exceptions when I load the pages. So starting off with stick vacs. So I've reviewed the Bissell 3-in-1, which is also known as a Bissell Featherweight. They're nearly identical. Now, the 3-in-1 is a good machine. You can buy that one at Walmart for 20 bucks. But the reason why I'm recommending the Bissell Featherweight instead is because this one actually comes with a crevice tool. So the main difference is that this model has a crevice tool included with it, which for a small corded handheld vac like this does make a big difference, because you can get into little nooks and crannies and get the various crumbs that you may need to get throughout the time span that you're not running your big vacuum. So the Bissell Featherweight gets my endorsement. There are also options from Dirt Devil and Eureka, but I found the Bissell one to be the most reliable. Of course, at this price range, you're not going to be super picky when it comes to build quality or filtration. That just does not come with the territory. So Bissell Featherweight, or as an alternative, the Bissell 3-in-1. So the Bissell 3-in-1 is 25 bucks at Walmart. The Featherweight is 33 on Amazon. It's also 35 at Big Lots. So the Featherweight gets my recommendation since it has a crevice tool, and it's also in this pretty blue color. So for 30 bucks and change, you get a pretty solid straight suction stick vac, which is good for hard floors, good for hard to reach areas, and you can also use it on really light rugs if you want to. And it's super lightweight. The cord is very short, but it doesn't use a lot of power, so adding an extension is no problem. And this is easily my recommendation on all these. The Eureka Blaze and the Dirt Devil Simply Stick are decent options too, but the one that gets my blessing is the Bissell. So, for your straight suction stick vac needs at a really, really ultra budget price, this is my pick. Next, we'll move on to the cheapest upright on my recommended list, and those of you that know me and have known me for a while saw this coming from a mile away. But my recommendation for a budget upright, at least the cheapest one that you can find that I recommend, is the Bissell PowerForce Model 1739. Now, I've used this machine millions of times. There is a bagless version called the Helix. I explicitly recommend the bagged version, specifically because filtration is better, the hose is better on it than the Helix, and the overall design is just a little bit more well thought out, and you'll get better filtration out of bags. If you want a bagless version of this, that will come later. I don't recommend the Helix, I recommend the Turbo. But for the bagged unit, the original PowerForce is really solid. It's brand new for under 60 bucks. Yes, inflation has brought it up a little bit. It used to be 50, but if you want to spend 50 on it, you can also get this refurbished direct from Bissell. You'll get half the warranty, 6 months instead of a year, but it's still a fantastic machine. Is it cheap? Yes. But if you take good care of it and you change the belts as you should and you replace the bags as you should, this thing will easily last you a decade. And I hear so many people lie and say that these cheap vacuums are not capable of lasting more than 2 or 3 years. It's just simply not true. If you take care of the machine, especially the bagged unit, and if you get the Clean Fairy HEPA bags, which I will also hopefully remember to link in the description, you can get them for barely over $1 a piece per bag, get HEPA filtration, and you're not going to have any issues with dust on this machine. Sure, the cord's a little bit short. There used to be an upgraded version called the Powerlifter Bagged Pet and the CleanView Bagged Pet, which while I do recommend those, unfortunately those machines are no longer available, so there's not really any point in recommending them. But the 1739 gets my blessing for the best budget vacuum, at least in the $60 price category. I've had, while this machine's not perfect, it's definitely the best in this price range. Dirt Devils in this price range are just simply not worth it, and there's a reason why I don't have any Dirt Devils on my recommended list. I've used literally every single one that Dirt Devil currently offers, and none of them are as good of a value as the Bissell. So next we'll move on to canisters. So if you want a cheap budget canister, my recommendation is the matching Bissell Zing. Now, if you want a really good combination where you can have great bare floor cleaning, great carpet cleaning, and very little maintenance, you don't have to get a machine that does both. You can get both the Bissell Zing and the PowerForce, and for only $120, you've got a really solid combo. And the Bissell Zing, I've had this model before, the only difference is mine's green instead of purple, and it's a really good machine. The bags are super cheap, and you can also substitute Simplicity Jill bags if you want HEPA, and there is an upgraded version of this called the Simplicity Jill, which I completely forgot about until just now actually, but that machine is also on my recommended list, so hopefully I'll remember to put that in the description as well. So the Zing though, great machine for the price, $60, $62 as of right now on Amazon. Sometimes it goes up a bit in price, but even at $80, I think it's still really worth it. It's lightweight, it's easy to carry, it uses a standard 1.25" fitting, so you can use any attachments you want. So I've been very happy with my Zing, and I've also been very happy with my Mighty Mite. Both of them are great, and I have both of them on my recommended list. So, there is a bagless version of this, but again, while I can recommend that in a similar vein to the PowerForce, I recommend the bagged version over the bagless. So, they're both good, they both get my endorsement, but the bagless one is the one I'm really swaying towards, so if you're undecided, get the bagged version. Next, I mentioned earlier about if you want a bagless version of the PowerForce, do not get the PowerForce Helix. The hose is much worse quality than it is on the bagged unit, and it overall doesn't have as good filtration and as good of a cyclone setup as the Turbo. The Turbo has an actual proper dual cyclonic design, and while it's not as crazily, how do I say this? While the filtration is not as efficient as it would be on a machine with a sealed system or a machine with more cyclones, for the price, and especially compared to the previous PowerForce Bagless Turbo that this replaced, the filtration is a huge upgrade. And the thing I love about these is the filters are way more easy to wash than the previous models. So it's very easy to pop out the filter, wash it, and they're super cheap, so you can easily have other filters on standby if you want to keep going. Now, again, I recommend the bagged version over the bagless, but as long as you take care of this and you don't suck up anything that's too fine, you're not really going to have any issues with this. So, if you want a bagless machine, spend the extra couple bucks and get the Turbo. You'll get a longer cord, a better cyclone, a wider cleaning path, better hose, and also a turbo brush. It's not a very good turbo brush, but hey, better have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Now, there is a rewind version of this, but I've explicitly excluded uprights with cord rewinds from my recommended list because I've seen a lot of cord rewinds on Bissell and Hoover budget machines that have premature failures, and getting them replaced is often a hassle. I don't feel like it's worth it. There is a rewind version of this, but my endorsement mostly applies to the non-rewind version, which you see right here. And next, for a budget cordless stick vac, the Tineco A10-. Now, I've used this machine. I haven't done a full review on it, but I have used this machine. In fact, I used one just today. And While it's not the most premium thing in the world, the fact that the Hoover H8 that I previously really enjoyed is no longer available, and unfortunately there's been a lot of issues with that, this is what is going to be replacing that machine in my budget category, because out of all of these machines that are of this style, the Tineco has the most name recognition as it shows up in box stores, and it's had what appears to be the best customer service experience based on what I've gathered. Now, it's still a really cheap budget stick vac. It's not going to be a great cleaner. It's not going to be perfect. But for the price, something to use as a dustbuster and use to supplement a full-size vacuum on a really tight budget, this is really solid. And I don't really think you can go wrong with this. Again, it's cheap. Don't expect it to be repairable. Don't expect it to last. But for 85 bucks, can you really go wrong? I don't think so. Next, I mentioned the Mite in passing. It's not really called that anymore on this product page, but it is the Eureka Mite. So, if you like the idea of the Bissell Zing, but you want something with a bit of a larger capacity bag, and you don't want a cord rewind, you just want something where you just wind the cord underneath the machine, the Mite is pretty solid. The Mite has been my bench vacuum, the vacuum that I use to clean out other vacuums, ever since I got it. Now, I have the older version that you can attach a HEPA filter to, so unfortunately this model doesn't support that, but you do have the ability to run HEPA bags, and any bags you get for this are going to be very affordable, and despite how tiny they seem, they actually last a pretty long time. So, definitely gets my endorsement, the Eureka Mite. Now, between this and the Zing, I'm generally going to prefer the Zing most of the time, but I do also really enjoy the Mite. So at that point, it's just a matter of preference. Again, the build quality on these is not great, the wheels are kind of sketchy, and they're very cheap, but they're also incredibly simple, and they make a great companion to a standard upright that has a stretch belt where you can't shut off the brush roll. Getting something like this to do your bare floors and do your above floor cleaning is it's definitely a great solution if you don't mind having multiple machines, which really you probably shouldn't. There's nothing wrong with having more than one vacuum. Trust me, I know. Now next, I unfortunately do not recommend, in fact I wholeheartedly disrecommend the current machine that replaced this. Now, there is a Walmart machine called the Hoover High Performance Swivel, and it goes under a couple different names. I reviewed it, Performance Reviews reviewed it, and a couple other people also reviewed it as well. I explicitly do not recommend that version because it has a major design flaw with the front of the nozzle where the brush roll digs into carpet when you put it in the upright mode, and it explicitly rests on your carpet. And because of how aggressive it is, it destroys your carpet, and it makes it nearly impossible to use the tools or to park the machine upright. It completely disqualifies the machine, which is unfortunate because it was right on track to being a great machine. And that will be covered more in my disappointments of the year, which I may do a video on. So because that machine has that flaw, the previous generation model, the Whole House Rewind, gets my endorsement. Now again, there was a version of this that doesn't have a cord rewind called the XL Pet that I just did a video on, but that machine's no longer available. So the only option is the version with the rewind. But I have used these machines, and the rewinds do sometimes fail on these, but they're not super bad. So if you want an upright with a cord rewind in this price range, this is my recommendation. And Amazon has a bunch of these that are in different colors and have slightly different attachments. This one, I mean, they're all about the same price, so I picked out this one because the silver color is quite nice. But again, there's different versions, and they're all equally good. This is just the exact one that I happen to pick. $119 for a $120 vacuum, you can't go wrong. It has a surprisingly effective dual cyclone, and while it is a little bit heavy and a little bit bulky compared to the Bissells, it does have better build quality, so there is a trade-off there. And if you're open to that trade-off, it's a pretty solid option. Next, we're going to go back to bagged units. This is one of the most underrated machines that I have seen ever, the Sanitare SO4110A. Now, this machine is primarily based off of the older style of Bissell PowerForce, as is the BigGreen that I'm about to recommend as well. Now, here's the thing. The BigGreen is the better machine between the two, but the Sanitare is often cheaper, and if you're using this in a household setting, the difference in the build quality might not matter to you too much. And I do think the color is nicer on the Sanitare, but of course functionality is more important. So if you're wanting something similar to the PowerForce that I recommended earlier, but you want something with a bit better build quality, something with a longer cord, a longer hose, and attachments that give you a little bit more reach, this is a really solid choice. It's based off of the old style PowerForce, but it has a metal handle, a stretch hose, which some models had, and it has a well, Sanitare backing it instead of just Bissell. Now, again, I do feel like the BigGreen is a bit of a better choice, but the BigGreen's also more expensive. So between the two machines, the BigGreen and the Sanitare, the BigGreen gets my endorsement even more because parts are readily available on Bissell's website, they're super cheap, and this machine is definitely better built than the Sanitare despite it having a plastic handle instead of a metal handle. The BigGreen uses a type of rubbery plastic that makes it a little bit more durable, and some of the things that were prone to breaking on the consumer PowerForce versions, like the height adjustment wheels, have been reinforced with metal. So there is a good build quality upgrade there. It's not just a PowerForce with a commercial cord at a higher price. And again, bags are super cheap for this. You can get the same Bissell style 7 bags that I showed you in the PowerForce. Same story with belts and brush rollers. They're obviously all interchangeable. So, the BigGreen and the Sanitare both get my recommendations. Generally, if you have to pick one and the couple dollars difference in price isn't a deciding factor, get the BigGreen. Otherwise, get the Sanitare. So, my personal philosophy is I use the Sanitare for at-home use, and I use the BigGreen for commercial use. That's the way that I've chosen to do it, and it's been a very decent solution. So, both of these machines, but especially the Bissell BigGreen commercial PowerForce bagged, get my endorsements. Whether that's the SL4110A or the BGU1451T, same story. I recommend these not only compared to a lot of other consumer machines, but also commercial machines as well. You can get a commercial Auric for a few dollars more than this, but I see zero reason to recommend an Auric in 2023. It may be a bit controversial, but there's not a single Auric I recommend. I just don't feel like they're practical in today's day and age. This machine is built just as well as an Auric. Again, controversial, but the parts are much cheaper, they're much easier to find, and it's a bypass machine, so you don't have to worry about breaking fans or anything. And despite it having a hose and attachments that significantly adds usability, it's not that much heavier. So I definitely endorse both of these machines. This particular BigGreen commercial, I've owned one of these for over 5 years, and the only maintenance that I've ever had to do on it besides bags and belts is I only just recently had to replace the brush roll. And the brush roll is only $11, so no complaints there. Next. Now, I reviewed the Dreametech T30, or at the very least I looked at it. I unfortunately lost a lot of the parts, and that delayed the review. Dreametech was not able to send out replacements, so that review kind of got shelved. But I did really enjoy the machine when I had it. So, as of now, as of the time that I filmed this video, the T20 is currently on sale for $149. And for that price, I think that this is a really solid choice. The T30, while I do like it, I feel like it's a little bit too expensive for what it is, but the T20 is excellent. I wish there was a soft roller with it, and the main carpet head doesn't do the best at deep cleaning carpets compared to Dyson's, but the build quality is actually much better than the equivalent Dyson, and the overall machine feels way more sturdy, and it's just as easy, in fact easier, to maintain and take care of. You can pull out the Cyclone and wash it. The whole thing comes apart really easy. Not as easy though as the Honiture, but it's still easy to take apart and keep the whole thing clean. So overall, I really enjoyed my time with the T30. It's one of my favorite stick vacs I've ever used, and the T20, because of it being on sale right now, at this point in time, at the $149 price point, gets my endorsement. Now, after sales support is a little sketchy, so I can't really recommend it based on that, so don't expect great customer service. I don't know if it does or doesn't have that, but based on the machine itself and the quality of what I've used, this is fantastic, especially for the price. Next, if you want something similar to the Sanitare or the BigGreen that I recommended, but you want something with a brush roller shut-off, this is my recommendation, the Hoover WindTunnel T-Series Tempo. Now, unfortunately, this machine has been replaced with a newer machine that, again, has a very bad design flaw, same as the Bagless ones, and it also is missing a brush roller shutoff, which was the biggest upside to this design. So, at this exact moment, both the Tempo and the Max version are the exact same price. So, for all intents and purposes, the Max is generally the more expensive one. So, right now, I'd say get the Max. But when there is a significant price difference between the two, then it's just a matter of, do you want to pay the extra couple bucks for a longer, clear hose and a wider base? Other than that, they're nearly identical. And while HEPA Y bags are pretty expensive, genuine from Hoover, the Clean Fairy Style 7 HEPA bags that I've used previously do fit in these machines, especially if you remove the bag dock. Now, I recommend removing the bag dock on these because I feel like the bag dock just kind of gets in the way. But if you're worried about pushing the bag on the collar correctly, then by all means leave the bag dock in, and it can make running it a little bit more idiot-proof. So both of these are great machines. I do not recommend the version that replaced these, but while these machines are still in stock and still on the market, I do still recommend them. And if you're wanting a cordless stick vacuum that's an upright style, unfortunately your options are very slim nowadays. There is very little that's out there that I would really recommend. I used to recommend the Hoover Lynx all the time, but unfortunately that machine's been discontinued, and the Evolve Pet that just replaced it is much more expensive. So really, I don't really see any practical reason to pick this over something like the Tineco, or even spending a couple extra bucks and getting a refurbished Dyson. But it's Hoover, you know the name. I mean, I don't really know if we can debate about being a good brand anymore. But as far as name recognition, it's a solid machine, and it uses the Onepwr system. So if you had the Onepwr upright back when that was still a thing, and if you have the Floormate Jet, then being able to swap the batteries between the two may be a selling point if you have the ecosystem. So it is a good machine. It cleans surprisingly well for a stick vac, but it definitely does get my endorsement because the previous Hoover Lynx was really good. I haven't noticed any issues with this design, and while I haven't actually bought one and reviewed it, I have used it enough to determine it. It's a quick vac, so there isn't really too much to learn about. So again, not great. I still would personally pick the Tineco or the Dreametech over this, but if you're specifically wanting an upright style and you want those swappable batteries, it's a pretty solid choice. Now, if you're wanting a commercial bagless upright machine, I recently very, very positively reviewed the Eureka War 1 Lightspeed. And this particular machine is basically just that, but with a better quality handle, slightly better build quality, and of course, it's new. And it's just as good as the previous Lightspeeds, at least based on what I've seen. There's no headlight, obviously, but while I haven't reviewed this exact version, the consumer reviews and the other reviews from other channels seem to point to this being very similar to the Lightspeed that I already recommend. So the filtration on this is pretty decent. It's a sealed system. The filter inside the cup does get dirty pretty quickly, but the filters are really easy to find and easy to change. It has a really big capacity, it's really lightweight, and it cleans very, very well. There is a bagged version of this as well, but to me, if you're going to get the bagged version, you might as well just get the Bissell BigGreen instead. The difference in performance is very, very close, although I do think this one does have the edge in cleaning performance. So it's just a matter of personal preference, but if you want to spend the extra couple bucks and you want to get something that has a bagless system, I don't recommend the bagless versions of the BigGreen or the Sanitare because they're based off the previous PowerForces. Those filter setups are horrible, and I don't recommend them. So if you need a bagless in a similar design to the Bissell BigGreen and Sanitare, I'd say just get this one instead. Alright, next we're going to move on to Dysons. Now, Dysons are a bit interesting right now because there's some that are on sale for a kind of alarmingly low price, and there's also some that are not. So the previous generation of Ball multi-floor uprights prior to the Ball Animal 3 are on sale very heavily right now, although from third-party sellers, so this could change at any point in time. So out of all the links I'm going to provide in the description, I expect this one to go dead first, although it does say it's in stock as of right now. Normally $400, this machine is down to $228 for a brand new machine. You really can't complain. Now, there are some types of carpeting that the active base plate design on these machines do not like, and you also need to really keep up to date with the maintenance on the cleaner heads on these because otherwise they will break. Unfortunately, these Dysons have really, really failure-prone cleaner heads, and if you don't take care of them, you might have a problem, and you don't want to break them because while Dyson will replace the head for you, they're on back order. So be very careful with these. But if you're willing to give up the tangle-free brush roller, you can save a good chunk of change compared to the Ball Animal 3. And speaking of which, oh, okay, we're not there yet. Dyson Ball, oh, come on. Okay, I guess we'll get to the Ball Animal 3 later. Next, Dyson V8 Animal. Out of all the Dyson stick vacs, I don't recommend the V15 or the V10 or anything like that, not because they're bad machines, but because I don't feel like the increased weight and bulk is worth it if you're not using it as a upright replacement machine, which I don't really think is super necessary. Now, if you're going to get a machine that's an upright replacement, by all means get the V15. But I still don't think that in general, now there's some exceptions obviously, but I don't think that in general, for a house that's my size, I don't feel like getting a cordless to replace an upright is exactly ready for prime time just yet. I don't think that's the case. If you have a smaller house or an apartment, absolutely, especially if you have a lower pile carpets. But right now, what I really recommend is simply getting a V8 for the quick pickups and for the in-between cleans, because it will clean good enough that it will keep your carpets relatively clean between when you run your main upright. And the Ball Animal 3 is definitely a really good combination with the new V8. They both have the anti-tangle cleaner heads, and they both work very well and are decently easy to maneuver. So the V8 Animal gets my recommendation. This machine has been my daily cordless machine ever since I got it, and I've been very, very happy with it. Now, there is the Absolute version, which has the fluffy roller. I recommend that version, but on Amazon I can only find the Animal. But there's nothing stopping you from buying this and buying the fluffy down the road, or tailoring, getting whichever package is more tailored to the type of flooring you have in your home. So, if you have a mix of both carpets and hard floors, and you're willing to change the heads, get the Absolute. Otherwise, just get the Animal. Next, we've got another cordless machine, and this is one I actually reviewed, the Dreametech T30. Now, again, unfortunately, there is no soft roller option for this machine, but the battery life is really good on it. It has a lot of the features that the V15 has, but in the form factor of what the V8 is, and that's one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite stick vacs that I've ever used, because it's still easy to use, it's not heavy in the hand, yet it still gives you a lot of the features of the V15, but much, much cheaper. And the build quality is actually better than the Dyson, believe it or not. And the attachments are very similar. In fact, kind of eerily similar, if you get what I'm saying. So, the T30, while the after-sales support isn't amazing, there's a lot of things I really like about the T30. And if you're really wanting a cordless stick vac, but you've sworn off of Dyson, this is, in my opinion, a really, really good fallback option. Because again, I do legitimately really like it, and it is the type of quality where if Dyson had come out with this, I wouldn't have batted an eye in terms of quality. It feels like a really sturdily built machine, which for the price, I really can't complain about. And I'm not saying that because I got a free one. It legitimately is really, really nice. So the T30, if you value build quality and you don't really care as much about performance, but you still want the features of the auto mode and the ability to measure particles, this is a really solid choice. Next, we're going with the Dyson Ball Animal 3. Now, this machine has been generally my daily driver since I got it for the most part. There's been some exceptions, but it's been a really good fallback option. Yes, it is bagless, so you have to eventually worry about cleaning out the cyclone and washing filters. That is kind of a pain. But there is no brush roll to detangle. And it also does not have a break in the brush roll. The entire thing is continuous, so you're not having to go over paths where the belt spot would be on the previous Dysons and on a lot of other machines. So that's really nice. I've really been a fan of the Animal 3. And the fact that you can actually adjust the suction on the floor head is good. I just wish they'd added on the actual spine going into the bin so I could change the suction on both ends, because the hose suction is way too much on this machine. But despite a couple of those weird little issues, the Animal 3 is the best Dyson they've ever come out with, and I still really like it. I don't know if I'd recommend paying $400 for it. I'd say maybe wait for it to go on sale, but if you need a vacuum right now, I don't really think you can beat this price. Especially because of the fact that it's gotten cheaper from the previous Ball Animal 2, despite the fact that inflation and everything else has been going up. So, you went from your Ball Animal 2 being $500 to your Ball Animal 3 being $400. Now, granted, the base model of the Animal 3, what we're looking at now, does not come with a tangle-free turbine, but you can buy that separately, and you'll actually spend less than buying the extra package. So it's kind of weird. But you also don't get the groom tool. So there's basically that. If you want to get the groom tool and the tangle-free turbine, get the extra package. or there's even a complete version, but that's only on Dyson's website that has even more attachments. But if you're just going to use what the vacuum normally comes with, the base model Animal 3 is still really good, and I definitely recommend it. Dyson's customer support has been getting a really weird as of late. It used to be really good. Now I'm a little bit hesitant, but it's still better than what any other company can offer, at least in this price range compared to Shark or anything like that. And if you've noticed, there's no Sharks on my list. I don't recommend Shark, and I can get into that in a separate video. But as of now, the Animal 3 is my choice for the $400 bagless machine, and if you're wanting a high-end bagless vacuum, then this is going to be the one that I pick. Next, if you want a machine that can kind of toe the line between the V8 and the V15, the V10 is pretty okay. I've noticed that it's not as heavy in the hand as the V11 or the V15, but it is still heavier than the V8, but you get that bigger bin. So if you're wanting a little bit of a better capacity compared to the V8 and you still want the motor bar cleaner head, then maybe you could go with the V10. Again, I would say just get the V8, but there's some people that really like the inline design, so for them the V10 is still a pretty decent deal. Again, I still would wait for this to go on sale because I don't really recommend getting just this to be your only vacuum, but as a supplemental machine, it's pretty good if you want something a little bit nicer than the V8. And finally, we've got two machines that are nearly identical to each other in a similar vein to the Bissell. We've got the Karcher CV300, which is just the commercial version of what I'm about to mainly recommend, the Cibo Dart. Now, there is also the Cibo Felix. The Cibo Felix is quite more expensive, and for some reason, it's not on Amazon. So, and I can't really find any good retailer for the Felix for some reason. I don't know if that's a weird glitch or what. But if you're going to buy a Cibo, I would say look up your local dealer and try to find an actual local person who's selling these, because much like with Riccar and Miele and a lot of those brands, it's really good to actually test drive them in person if you can, and it's a bit better to support your local dealer versus, throwing money into the ether that is Amazon. So if you're wanting to buy a machine on Amazon in the premium bagged sector like Cibo, Miele, Riccar, etc., then the Cibo Dart is my pick, and it will be linked in the description. I've been using this machine as my daily driver ever since I got it. Yes, it's only been a few days, but I've been that impressed with it. It's a supremely built machine. The warranty on it is really good, 5 or 7 depending on whether it's the vacuum or the motor. It's an incredibly versatile machine. It's decently lightweight. It does have a similar handle weight problem as a lot of the Sharks, but it's much better than those machines, and the lift away function is also just as good. And it cleans incredibly well. It has a manual height adjustment, so you don't have to worry about it clamping down to your floors. And if you get the Felix, you also get a swivel and a height adjustment. So there's definitely a lot of things to love about the Dart. And while I do think it's a little expensive, you definitely do get what you pay for in terms of quality. It is $150 more than the Ball Animal 3, and if it was my money, I don't know if I'd be able to justify that difference, but at the same time, there is a difference. And, my biggest complaints with the Dart are mainly just the fact that you don't have a lot of reach out of the box, but that can be addressed with accessories. So if you're wanting something that's a bit more simple in design, but still is really solid, gets the job done, and doesn't need a ton of maintenance, and still has really good filtration, this is a fantastic option. And a lot of people who have bought these really like them. Not a lot of people know about Cibo compared to Dyson and Shark, but they're a really good brand, and I have had no problems with any of my Cibo machines, at least not ones that were like 20 years old and falling apart. So these machines are built really well. If you're really rough on your vacuum, then something like this might be worth the investment. So that's pretty much that. That's my entire list of recommended machines. Now, this was very in-depth. We've been here for almost 35 minutes, but hopefully we learned something. And again, I couldn't fit every machine on this list. I thought 21 machines was enough. And the reason why there isn't a lot of canisters on this list is just because I haven't used that many canisters. And like I said, I'm not going to recommend something that I haven't used myself. So the only exception is that one cordless Hoover. That's just because there's so little options out there now in that category. But everything else on this list I have used and used extensively. So this was Intellitech Studios signing out with my April of 2023 vacuum recommendations. If there's any other machines that you have any questions about whether or not I recommend it, simply ask in the comments below, and I will happily answer your question. There's a lot of machines that I have reviewed, and there are also a lot that I haven't. So keep in mind, I have not used every single vacuum. So if you ask me about a vacuum I haven't reviewed yet, I'm unfortunately not going to be able to give you an answer, unless it's super close to something I have reviewed. So that's pretty much that. If there's anything else that I forgot, be sure to ask your comments and the questions below. I'll have, at least for Amazon, affiliate links for every single one of these products in the comment or in the description below. So if you want to support the channel and you're looking for a new vacuum, grab something on this list. You'll give a small kickback to the channel and help me out in terms of being able to buy more machines and review them. I do not accept sponsored videos, so keep that in mind. Every single one of these machines were bought myself when I reviewed them, with the only exception being the Dreametech T30, and that machine didn't even end up getting a review, so it had no chance to even actually sway my opinion on that. So, anyways, this is Intellitech Studios signing out. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you all have a good one. Peace.